I expect people will continue to join as we start here. I am Tracy Bigelow. I'm the principal HR partner for Earth and Environmental Sciences. And as you know, we have a mentoring program in EESA. And for those of you who are new, I'm telling you that now we have a mentoring program that you can join. And one of the things that we had heard from our mentees is that they like to hear about the career path stories of some of our senior leaders, some of our mid-career and even early career scientists and non-scientist staff. And so Kolby Jardine is our speaker for today. He is a research scientist in the ecology department in the climate and ecosystem sciences division. And he's going to speak about his career path. I did want to mention, as you probably all heard, that we are recording this session. So I have to notify you of that. And if you have to drop off for any reason, the recording actually will be posted on our mentoring site, and we will send out information about that. And the host today, I'm turning over to Sandy because my Zoom tends to drop off. So Sandy's going to be our host today. And with that, without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to you, Kolby. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see if I can share my screen here. You see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Is it in presentation mode?
No, there you are. Now you are.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about my rather nonlinear career path in science, which I have termed adventure science, because science to me is really an incredible adventure. And like all of us, you know, when I was a kid, when we were all kids, we were very curious about the world around us. And, so, you know, as scientists, we nurture that, we develop that, and we become, you know, very, very curious about all the different things that we're studying and interested in. And so, I grew up in Colorado into basically an adventure family, where at the age of 3 I was skiing and we just did all sorts of different outdoor adventures, from long distance backpacking, bike touring and motorcycling, and then I got really into skateboarding and snowboarding, and then a little bit later on rock climbing and kayaking and things like that. So there was never a dull moment. I spent a fair amount of time in the hospital from just like broken bones and all kinds of crazy stuff. So that gave me a really strong love of nature that is with me even to today, and was one of the reasons that I chose the career path that I did. And so my uncle is Ray Jardine, who has been a really big inspiration for me, both in terms of the engineering that he did, but also the outdoor adventures that he pioneered. And he has a quote that's really great that I really like, where it says, "No one else can live my life for me, or for you. In the end, you can't worry about what other people think. You've just got to do what you feel is right." And so he has a very strong sort of make it, learn it, and do it yourself philosophy, where he's not a fan of purchasing things. He thinks it's better to make it yourself. And also extreme dedication, focus, and patience, a very free, adventurous spirit, strong connections with nature, and extremely relentless training and planning for absolutely everything that he ever did and still does. And a very radical and revolutionary free thinker, in which he revolutionized several sports, including rock climbing, long distance, ultralight backpacking and adventuring, and numerous others such as sea kayaking. And along the way, I've gone to a large number of universities and field sites and had different positions. I've just had the opportunity to have some really incredible mentors along the way, starting with my Jeffrey Chambers here at LBNL, who really has spent a lot of time with me, talking with me, and just kind of working through all kinds of different things, not only about the science, but other aspects of my career. But all these people here, and there's several others as well, have really spent a lot of time with me in terms of teaching me things, teaching me technology, giving me advice, editing my papers, and it's just really been incredible. And so I'm for sure that one of my reasons for any success that I have today is because of all their help in my career. And so my work has developed into the field of ecometabolomics, in which metabolites are these molecules that make up the metabolism in cells, and a small fraction of them are volatile. And I've been, over the last, I think it's been like 20 years now, studying these organic gases in ecosystems and trying to understand biological processes and also atmospheric processes using this information. And one of my key collaborators in Brazil, Niro Higuchi, really taught me that in order to have success in research, you really have to align a number of moons or planets, including people, access to field sites, research infrastructure, including laboratories and so forth, research funding to support those, and persistence and focus for long periods of time sometimes, until you get to the finished product. And there are many other important areas for success, but these are the ones that I've been kind of trying to focus on as well to develop. And if you take one of them away, you pretty much don't have a research program. And so that's why I try to work on all these different aspects of research. And so I started my undergraduate at the Colorado School of Mines, which is an engineering college in Colorado, where I studied engineering, chemistry, physics, and then I was taking so much chemistry, and I was just really loving chemistry. And I read this idea where I read basically a molecular biology journal article. I'm like, wow, so all these concepts that I'm learning in chemistry could actually be applied to life in cells, and inside cells they're governed by the same sort of chemical processes that these abiotic reactions that I was studying are governed by. And so I just started to dream about getting into biochemistry. And I took essentially the only biological class at CSM, microbiology, which was a graduate level class. And that just really cemented rather in my mind that I wanted to, maybe get out of engineering a little bit and focus on biology. And so I started applying to schools. I got into New York University and a couple of other schools. And so I went to NYU after 2 years at CSM. But along the way, I stopped off at Harvard and did a summer internship where I really did research for the first time. And I worked with a graduate student there, Dan Hartle, who really just mentored me in so many different ways about what science is like and what research is like, and taught me all this cool stuff about molecular biology and working with DNA and so forth. But I think more importantly, he taught me how fun science can be. And that was just such an incredible experience for me to work with him. And so I thought that I wanted to work in the field of genetics. And so when I arrived at NYU, the whole time I worked in a DNA nanotechnology laboratory with Ned Seaman. And here I am kind of in the middle there, where we were designing different molecules. This one is the tetra crossover molecule. So molecules that don't exist in nature, but they're made with DNA. And so we would make this DNA synthetically, and then they would self-assemble into lots of cool different structures. And this was my project that I worked on for 2 years with him. And I think working with Ned, I really sort of learned what being a real scientist is like, because he was just such I felt like a real scientist. And he had a really great lab group, and we just had a lot of fun together. So then I went to graduate school at the Arizona ASU Center for Photosynthesis. And I was studying nanotechnology and biomimetic systems, trying to make an artificial photosynthetic system using some of the components of biology, but integrating some organic chemistry into it. And I really had some amazing success after about only 1 year of research. But unfortunately, I wasn't really prepared for like the open-ended type of research problems that you get in a real research world. I was more used to answers being in the back of the textbook type of thing. So I really struggled, and I really burned myself out after 1 year. And so I just decided I'm going to quit and go and through hike the Arizona Trail. So I had been reading some of the books of my uncle. I was like, okay, forget the science stuff. I'm gonna go backpack. And everyone told me that I was gonna ruin my life, my family, even my colleagues. But I just had to do it. I just had to go see what what the kind of outdoor adventure life was like. But after I got back from the trail, which was incredible, I landed a really low paying job as an instructor at San Juan College in New Mexico, where I was teaching only like 2 to 3 days a week: chemistry, microbiology, algebra, electronics, and then the other rest of the week, 4 to 5 days per week, I was reading science books, but really I was rock climbing and mountain biking and river kayaking and doing all this really fun outdoor stuff, most of the time. And so I had a really nice balanced life at that point, but I just didn't, there was no future for me to continue teaching there, and there was no money really at all doing that. And so, and I really was missing science, because I feel like I really love science so much, and so I wanted to get back into actually doing it. And so I started a master's degree in the South Dakota School of Mines. And I went there because it's kind of a strange place to go to school, but most people haven't heard of it. But it was an engineering college, and I really wanted to get back into kind of engineering. And so there I learned about LabVIEW programming for systems automation. I learned about gas chromatography and mass spectrometry and those different instruments. And I started to understand and learn about the biology of volatile organic compounds. And got to work in a couple of different field sites there in the Black Hills. And after my master's degree, I started to work with NCAR in Boulder, and with them went on a bunch of different field trips and field campaigns focusing on these volatile organic compounds, everywhere from Barrow, Alaska, North Carolina, Michigan, Colorado, California. And probably my favorite one was the Intex B campaign, where we studied volatiles over the Pacific Ocean, and as they're transported from Asia to the western coast of the United States. That was quite fun. But the whole time I was, in Boulder, doing like lots of rock climbing and other cool stuff. Up in Barrow, I was doing some kite boarding, which was really fun. And so it's kind of always been an important part of my research, which is not always easy to maintain, but kind of an active outdoor lifestyle. But I really got bit by this instrument engineering bug, even today, in which I consider myself both an engineer and a scientist, or a Sci-Eneer, where I love building instruments and working with instruments, but I also love using them to do science and make new discoveries. And that's kind of one of my philosophies. And so here I am in Michigan. Here's my homemade, but fully automated thermal desorption GC FID system for organic volatiles. In this case, I was studying the soil volatiles in Michigan. But it was cool because it was completely automated, and I controlled it remotely from my little laptop. And so that was before a lot of people were doing remote instruments. I set up and built my own there, so that was pretty cool. But I got this instrumentation engineering interest also from my PhD advisor in New York, where I started my PhD at Stony Brook, John Mack. And so here John is here in his little ultra lightweight aircraft, in which he's teaching kids the route that he's going to fly. He does some air monitoring studies with this aircraft, as well as a lot of ice core work that he does. But I just took so many different classes. I didn't want to take any more classes. I just wanted to do research at that point, but I had to take so many classes in atmospheric science and marine sciences, but it was incredible, because especially the marine science stuff, and I think my favorite class was marine biology. But there, throughout my 4-year PhD there, I did a lot of adventures, kayaking and mountain biking, and these things exploring the northeastern United States. And halfway through my program, I got accepted into this BART training program, or the Biosphere Atmosphere Research and Training Program at the University of Michigan Biological Station. And that was really cool, because I got my own research money. It wasn't a lot, but it was a little bit, and got to take all kinds of cool classes with other students, and live and work for 2 summers at the Prophet Tower, which I believe is an American tower, in Michigan. And that was a really, really awesome time for me, because basically I learned how to do a field research project all on my own. After I finished the PhD, I decided to bike from Mexico into Canada on the Great Divide route with my wife Angie, and that was really cool. I had no idea where I was going to do a postdoc, and I hadn't even published a single paper from my PhD, but I had this solar panel you can see in the back of my bike here that was charging as we were pedaling throughout the day, a little tiny battery that I would then use to power my laptop at night. And then I actually published 2 papers along this trail, believe it or not, and managed to get a postdoc job in Arizona, in Tucson, Arizona, working with the University of Arizona and Scott Seleska. And so Biosphere 2, it was, I could talk forever about this, but let me just kind of summarize this here. So I arrived in Biosphere 2, and my first week I sent several emails to my advisor, and I was like, hey, let's meet to discuss what research we're going to do. No response. Next week goes by, same thing. Meanwhile, I start working on other things. And basically, I didn't really get any kind of direction in terms of what I should be doing there. But as soon as I found out that there was some funds I could use to set up a laboratory, I just went kind of nonstop and set up an incredible laboratory and interfaced it to the tropical rainforest biome that they have there and the desert biome that they have there. And from that capability, I linked what I was learning in those two different biomes with two different field sites, two different field experiments in the Creosote bush in southern Arizona and the Amazon forest. And so I was really liking the idea still of this instrument engineering and also getting into the idea of different spatial scales. And so I built and designed different gas exchange systems for plants at the leaf, branch, and ecosystem scale. And here you can see on the bottom left, my little homemade light and temperature controlled leaf chamber, which did everything that, for example, a light core gas exchange system does, like a portable photosynthesis system does. But it didn't cost $50,000. I can't remember how much I paid for it. Maybe like $20,000, including the Lycor 7000 sensor. But it had a lot of other capabilities because it could measure other gases, like these organic gases that I was interested in. And when I went to the Creosote site, I set up my own field site, and there was nothing there. And so I set up a portable laboratory, a generator that provided electricity to that little laboratory 24 hours a day. And I installed some of this mass spectrometer equipment in there and kept it running through a monsoon growing season. And the incredible thing from that is that there is some papers on the organic compounds from the creosote bush, and they were basically saying that creosote didn't really have many compounds. For example, this compound that I study a lot, isoprene, they said, okay, creosote doesn't have isoprene. I started measuring so many different compounds, and not only did I find that creosote had isoprene, it had tons and tons of other compounds. It's probably one of the most strongest emitting species of plants when it has water, because it's just covered with oils, and so it was just absolutely fascinating for me to and to be quite honest, I'm still following up today on the complexity of the volatiles that I found there. And in fact, some of them I went to find also in the Amazon. So I went with Scott Saleska for the Amazon Pyre course in the Amazon. I taught there, and then I stayed for 6 months to conduct this Brazilian air study, where I tried to measure all these different volatiles that I was seeing from the Biosphere 2 mesocosm, and also the desert studies, to try to detect those in the jungle. And I basically didn't leave the jungle for 6 months. I would leave only just to go, take a quick shower or whatever back in the city of Manaus. So I didn't learn any Portuguese. I didn't learn much about Brazilian culture at all, unfortunately, that time. But I collected an incredibly awesome data set that spanned seasons and looked at how those compounds change through within the canopy to above the canopy. continuously for, I think it was like 6 months of data. So I got promoted to a research professor position at University of Arizona, but I kind of was wanting to get a different experience after my Biosphere 2 days. After I returned to the Amazon, I was like, I don't know, I wanted something new. And so I started writing proposals and things like that. And I ended up getting an offer to go work in Germany. And it was going to be like kind of like a second postdoc. It was really cool. And boy, what an experience. I was there for 1 month. I literally like didn't sleep the entire month. I just was doing all kinds of fun stuff, like social stuff, but also doing lots and lots of research. And I even invented a new technique there for C13 labeling of plants. But after the month, throughout that month, I was talking with Jeff Chambers here in Berkeley, and he ended up hiring me there and here in Berkeley. And so I told my German colleagues that I was sorry, but that you know, I was going to move to Berkeley, and so they're disappointed. But I was really excited because I was going to go explore California and also work on these volatiles in the Amazon again. And so, yeah, so that's what I did. So I came to Berkeley. I mounted an incredible laboratory with Jeff Chambers and basically packed it all up after we tested it, and we shipped it down to Brazil. And there I just worked with some incredible people, and I mounted the laboratory at INPA, which is the National Institute for Amazon Research. And it was just the most incredible scientific experience. Personally, it was extremely difficult, but scientifically, it was just incredible. One of the reasons is because I was basically flooded with a huge number of students that were just not only super trained in ecology and all this other stuff that I really didn't have much experience with, but they you know, just the culture, and they just, you know, they really wanted to participate and help, and they were just so much fun, and you know, it's like every night at the campsite, you know, students were playing music and dancing, and you know, I just really fell in love with the Brazilian culture, and became an assistant. Well, so I guess I'm an affiliate professor at INPA now, and I still have some students there, PhD and master students, that I'm working with. So working with the NG Tropics project there in the second half of my time in Brazil for the phase 1 of NG Tropics, we set up a bunch of environmental monitoring systems on the K34 tower, but also some physiological sensors like sap flow and leaf gas exchange and leaf water potential systems there. What really came out of my time there is just a huge diversity of studies that I was directly involved in. Not to list or to go through the whole list here, but anything from plant drought stress to the repellent Aztec ant volatiles that they use to fight off mosquitoes and other insects, drone mapping of the forest, biochemical metabolism of C1 and C2 compounds, just so many different things there in Brazil. It was hard for me to stay focused, and I was telling everybody that I was like a kid in a candy store, because it was just heaven, you know, and scientifically. And I think all these different scientific studies really help keep my mind open and look for connections between different research areas that, perhaps disciplinary and maybe like the ecologists don't talk to the biochemists, who don't talk to the atmospheric scientists and so on. I was really just trying to like go after all of it. But I think one of my coolest discoveries that I made there is that of these highly reactive monoterpenes, in which we measured them in the atmosphere for the first time. And what we found is with these super highly reactive monoterpenes that were thought to not even really be important in the atmosphere, we found that they dominate the emissions from the forest at high temperatures. And that could have some very important implications for the climate in terms of aerosol formation potential and cloud seeding, but also acting as an antioxidant for the plants. And so that was a really cool discovery. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about my philosophy of discovery science, and which I kind of call freestyling. I like freestyle rap a lot. So it's kind of like off the top of your head, what are you going to do with what you have? So the way that I've come to love to do science is that you start with an initial hypothesis or a research question with some ideas, and then which I think everybody does. But then along the way, you start collecting your data, you start investigating. If something comes up unexpected, it could be a new discovery. I think a lot of people may just not pay attention to that because it's not what they were expecting. And so, but historically, a lot of the discoveries have been the unexpected things that you weren't looking for. But then my favorite is if something shows an opposite behavior than expected. It's almost guaranteed in my experiences to lead to a new discovery. If you're expecting something to go up and then it goes down, okay, well, what's going on there? And the other thing is, like, if you really are excited about something, then you just keep looking into it. And maybe this is controversial also, but you shouldn't just work only on what you're funded to do. And because how are you going to get new funding, for example, if you're not exploring different things? And so that's been a little bit important to me as well. And some people have the philosophy or the idea that everything's already been done before. We can't really make any advances here. Even my master's advisor told me with respect to isoprene, it's like, isoprene is the most studied volatile out there. Everybody knows everything about it. We can't really learn much about that anymore. And I went on to publish like 20 papers on isoprene. And I still think that there's just so much more to explore about it. So I feel like no matter what has been done before, there's an ocean of discovery that's waiting to be discovered. And then just this kind of example of that, I was tasked in Brazil to identify 10 trees that were going to be included in this NG Tropics project. And I didn't know much about tree identification, so I worked with a Brazilian to help me identify them. And one of the things that he was doing was he was cutting the bark to look at if there's any latex or resins there. And sure enough, this particular tree had yellow latex, which isn't that rare. But what was stunning to me is that as I was standing there, within 30 minutes, that yellow latex turned completely black. And I noticed that it sealed the wound. And I ended up going back to that tree and demonstrating that that process was completely dependent upon molecular oxygen, and wrote a very small paper about it. And so that's just kind of an example of discovery science. You know, it doesn't have to be where if you're working on your project and you see something off to the side that's kind of cool, it doesn't have to be where it's going to take you completely off focus and you know, you're going to write a paper for a year on something that's completely unrelated to your project. I wrote this paper in I think 1 or 2 days with some students. So yeah, I think that that's a really cool thing that I learned, is that you have your larger projects that take a while and that you're working on more comprehensive papers and stuff, but always keep a lookout for little small cool discoveries that you can do something small and publish something small as well. And that's been kind of helpful for me. So I had applied to the DOE Early Career Project 3 times, and on my 3rd time, I was awarded the early career, and this was only after, you know, I don't know, I think that I wrote maybe 15 or more large proposals to all kinds of funding agencies in Europe and United States and Brazil. And I was helping a lot of other people get funding, but I just wasn't able to get anything for myself. And I felt pretty frustrated about that. But then finally, I got this early career project, and which I'm working on now with Rebecca DeWurst, who's a postdoc in EESA. And it's such a cool project because it integrates both biochemistry and plant physiology with biosphere atmosphere interactions and climate change, and biofuel and bioproduct objectives of the DOE. So I think that was kind of a quick summary of my career, but I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Wow. That was fantastic.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. You've been around. I had no idea you moved around so much. Well, are there any questions from the group here? I think I will ask the question that I always have to ask, which is, if you could have done anything different, what would you have done differently? Or is there anything you would have done differently?
That was a really hard question to answer. Yeah, I had so many things that I wish I would have done, you know, but you can't do everything. And you do want to make sure that whatever it is you do choose to work on, that you end up, you know, coming up with some products from that. So I think, you know, maybe one of my problems that maybe not everybody has is that I do struggle with focusing, because I am interested in a lot of different things. And so I think it would have been maybe better if I would have just stayed on a little bit more linear path than just trying to do all kinds of different stuff. You know, from the nanotechnology to the genetics to the atmospheric science and engineering. But the other thing is, all those different experiences, you know, it's somehow coming full circle, and I'm utilizing a lot of those things that I thought that they weren't at all connected, and even what I'm doing today. So that's a hard question though to answer. I don't really know.
Figured as much. Well, actually, you bring up a good point, because I imagine, and not being a scientist, you have your interests, and then you have the science that's going to get funded, that has the chance of getting funded. And it sounds to me like you followed your heart for the most part in what you were interested in, not necessarily what was getting funded. And or am I wrong? Is that, how do you balance that? Because scientists are in this because they're passionate about the science, and it's very hard to be passionate about something that you're just being told you have to do because that's what you're going to get the funding. And how do you balance that with still doing something you're interested in, and also doing where the money comes from?
Yeah, and I think I erred more on doing what I was interested in, and because of that, it's a very narrow field. There's just limited opportunities in terms of doing research in that specific area. And so, yeah, I did kind of sacrifice a lot of areas of my life to continue to do the kind of science and stuff that I was interested in. And but it is hard to, I think, yeah, I don't know.
I'm just trying to ask these are hard questions. I don't know if there's a right answer, but it's
yeah, those are hard questions to answer.
Yeah, one would hope that if you follow your passions, that the money will come, so to speak, because you'll find the right place to be for that. And
I would say that is what has happened to me. And I didn't think that was going to happen. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to just go back and teach again and make no money and be a dirtbag rock climber again, which I would have been fine with. But yeah, I think it is the case where you're saying that if you just kind of like follow what you believe in, and you'll eventually get to where you want to be. And that's definitely what's happened to me.
Great. So Barbara, I see you have your hand up. Sorry.
Yeah, quickly, Kolby, maybe what's your impression since you spent time in Brazil and you saw the different reality of like science over there? Because as you mentioned, science is so much about funding and it's hard to get the funding. So what was your impression, I think, when you first went to Brazil and you mentioned all these like super cool, fancy engineering schools and places you've been to, and then let's say you landed at IMPA, which for Brazil standards, it's pretty advanced, I mean, what was your impression when you crossed these like realities and, access to like science, money, technology, etc.?
Yeah, I think for sure there's big differences in terms of access to science, money, and infrastructure and equipment, but one of the things that I was struck about working in Brazil is the collaboration, especially among the students, where the United States is so much about competition, and even the students in some ways are competing against each other, and I was just struck in Brazil, the students are helping each other. Like a student would spend an entire week helping another student in the field to collect their data. That's unheard of in the U.S. from my experiences, and so that part is just incredible. The community aspect of it, where people really are just trying to help each other and not be so competitive, but then the funding issues are there and as well, and I guess it's not getting any better, but
yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Hi, Lean, you have a question?
Hi, Kolby. Your experience is super cool. I'm wondering, how do you find your interest? Do you have the interest at the very beginning, or do you, develop an interest gradually as a process as you work more and more on a project and get more familiar about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I was telling my kids just the other day that a smart person can learn to love anything. And that is very true in my experiences. It's very, you gotta be careful of what you get into, because a smart person can really get into to anything. And so for me, I think I kind of inherited this a little bit from my mother. It's very easy for me to get interested in stuff. But it's a little bit harder for me to, follow through rigorously on a specific topic to the point where you can really make a contribution. And so I think, there's different strategies and people have different strengths and weaknesses, but yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I would just like to say, Kolby, that I really enjoyed learning more about your adventure side. I did also spend like my PhD and master's and part of my undergraduate doing like this, having this dual life between like adventure and sports and science. And I think they go along so much. I can totally see you getting inspiration and better organizing your thoughts and ideas when you're biking. Not sure in the uphill, but maybe like flat and downhill. But yeah, I think this is awesome. It's something that, it's a kind of healthy practice. Not that everybody needs to climb Yosemite, but if like more people kind of let's say supported like scientists, even like especially like starting careers, to spend more time trying to get outdoors, right? And breathe some fresh air. You may be even better at what you're doing if you don't, it's not about like staring the screen to get the work done, right? Sometimes you get the work done outside. Yeah, no, I really, really enjoyed. Thanks.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I actually, what I think that's true with any situation. And some of us who are working from home have actually realized that you can step out into your backyard for a few minutes and it's refreshing. And maybe that's where you get your best thoughts. I always get my best thoughts in the shower when I can't write them down, but I'm not suggesting that for everybody, but I do agree you certainly came across that way. And I think it's important to keep that in mind. So.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I would like to teach the world is that you don't have to be a professional athlete to do some incredible adventures. I'm kind of big, I'm overweight, but I do all kinds of stuff, not nearly as much as I should. And the other thing is like, if you can go on a short hike for one day or a short bike ride for one day, then why can't you just do that again the next day and then the next day? And you could do longer trips. And, a lot of us studying environmental sciences, I think we need to be the leaders in terms of helping the world reconnect with nature. For example, in Manaus, the population of, what is it, like 2.5 million people in the center of the Amazon, almost nobody knows anything about the forest or even wants to go and see it. One of the most spectacular forests in the world with its huge biodiversity. I mean, just the things I saw in that forest are just incredible. And none of the locals know, I don't want to say none, but a small percentage of the locals know the forest.
Yeah, exactly. Coming from Brazil, my parents came from the countryside. It's because there is a lot of like prejudice of like, if you're closer to nature, it means like you're less developed, you're like a kind of country, rural type of like prejudice. And in my experience in Manaus is that many people don't even like to be connected with like their indigenous background. They're like, indigenous me, no. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of like historical, yeah, there is some history explaining that.
That's too bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, last call for any questions. Anybody speak up? Okay, well, Kolby, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for such an enlightening, both on the science side and actually on my life habits. This has just really been wonderful. Thank you for sharing your journey. And
Thanks, Tracy.
yes, and the recording will be posted on the mentorship site. If anybody, please tell other people who couldn't attend today to go and check it out. This was a really great talk. So thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye. Thanks, Kolby.
Thank you.